Today we're going to talk about VMware Cloud Foundation on FlashStack. VMware Cloud Foundation is a focus of VMware because it brings this same architecture that they have in VMware public cloud offerings and brings it to your data center or to your edge deployment. This provides a number of benefits, starting with it's a standardized architecture. It provides you full stack management, or what I like to call application through infrastructure-based management. It's been tested and validated. These are the on-prem versions with Cloud Foundation are built off of VMware validated designs, and it focuses around a lot of simplicity and scaling around lifecycle management, automation of service delivery, and includes built-in security now with Carbon Black. When you put Cloud Foundation on premises on FlashStack, what you gain is an additional set of capabilities for this architecture that we are going to share with you some details around during our time together today. These benefits include a cloud-like agility, fabric flexibility, simplifying management, modernizing and protecting the apps, and ultimately optimizing the resources within your infrastructure. Now, I want to pause to share with you that when we have this conversation with technical teams, it's usually about a 3-hour conversation. And so I want to set some expectations here, which is if you're technical in nature, we are probably going to give you some points that are interesting, show you some interesting demos, and we're going to leave a lot of additional details that you're going to want to know more about. And so you're going to have to follow up with us following this event if you want to know more. And you can do so very easily by heading over to purestorage.com. Or tweeting about it, and we can do some follow-up based on what you share within Twitter. So let's start real quick by introducing you to FlashStack. This is our converged infrastructure offering. It is a joint offering from Pure Storage and Cisco. It's very ideal to support a wide range of workloads, which is really what one of the challenges that you have when you're hosting a cloud. Cloud architectures put a lot of effort into the infrastructure, and then you've got to support a wide range of workloads that may be performance, availability, or cost-centric in their needs. We believe that what we'll share with you during this time today, that you'll get to understand how this is a very flexible and future-proof architecture, that there's some very unique advantages out of the stateless disaggregated architecture, and that ultimately you'll think that this, or come to find that this may be an optimal platform for deploying VMware Cloud Foundation. So let's get into a little bit of detail here and focus on that bottom layer of the layer cake, if you will. And let's talk about providing a cloud-like agility to the infrastructure below VMware Cloud Foundation. And this is going to start by me having to maybe share some basics that maybe not everyone in the audience is familiar with. So VMware Cloud Foundation introduces a new architectural consideration within your VMware environment, and it's called domains. And there's two types of domains. And the first domain is called the management domain. It's actually created by VMware Cloud Builder when you actually start to spin up your VCF deployment. And the management domain stores all of the VMware management tools. That's your tools like vCenter Server, as well as some new tools like SDDC Manager, or vSphere Lifecycle Manager, as well as all the other VMs that you need for like NSX and vRealize, etc. Having a management domain is a separation of fault domains from the workloads. This means that you could have a workload fail and you've got a separate infrastructure supporting the management tool so you can bring that workload back online. Or if you had a failure within the management domain, the workload domains could continue to operate. You just couldn't provision anything new until the management domain was back online. In addition to the management domain is a concept called workload domains. These workload domains are comprised of one or more physical vSphere clusters. This is where applications go, right? Where we look at virtual machines or containers, and they're provisioned for many different purposes, right? Maybe you have a workload domain for different types of workloads, different departments, business processes, licensing management, etc. They're deployed by SDDC Manager, and the hosts inside them are managed by vSphere Lifecycle Manager, or VLCM. The workload domains can reside on vSAN-based storage, the management domains must reside on vSAN, but the workload domains also have an option to run on shared storage. And this is where we're going to share with you a little bit of information today. So if you look at what's on your screen right now as a high-level overview of VCF deployment with direct attached storage, and there's a lot of these options in the market, so I'm not going to reference any of them. What you see here is a very simple overview of 4 domains. You've got a management domain, a VDI, a database, and a consolidation or VSI workload domains. They're all managed by SDDC Manager and vCenter. And what you need to know is that compute and storage are managed and scaled as a single unit. Again, remember, each domain is comprised of at least one vSphere cluster. And what you find from this architecture is that it's siloed. I can't share any of the hardware infrastructure between any workload domain. This means it's inefficient. If you get a workload domain where the resources are underutilized, right now that hardware stack has an amount of technical debt, right? It's not efficiently being used, right? And customers have paid for more resources than they're actually using. And worst part about this is it's inflexible, meaning if I want to reassign hardware from one domain to the other, I actually have to go through a very lengthy and performance impacting process called a data rebalancing. And I have to go through it both on the source domain where I want to evict a compute device from, as well as on the receiving domain where I'm going to insert that compute resource. When we talk to customers, particularly enterprise and large commercial accounts, this process they really try to avoid because it's really detrimental to the running of every application within each workload domain. By having VCF on FlashStack, customers gain agility and efficiency. So what you'll notice here is that the image looks very similar. I still have my management domain. This time it's on UCS vSAN ready nodes. And all my workload domains have their storage provided to them by a FlashArray. Each workload domain is still a separate vSphere cluster, but what's unique about this is it's a shared architecture, meaning we can actually share the resources and move them between different workload domains. This helps customers be more efficient. They can reduce their spend in this space, and they can increase the optimization through agility, the ability to, as I mentioned, provision or increase or decrease the amount of storage capacity on demand without having to do any data rebalancing, the ability to actually move a compute node from one domain to the other in minutes without moving any data or impacting the performance of any applications within a workload domain. Now, I've shared with you a lot. We've kind of looked at PowerPoint right now on a little high level, but Kyle's got a demo to actually show you what this looks like to actually move a host from one workload domain to the other. And I should point out here that process, you don't just simply move a host from one to the other. You actually have to re-baseline the host, reset to a base ESXi instance, inventory it into SDDC Manager, and then provision it into the second workload domain. And Kyle's going to show you how you can do that all, and the total time is just minutes.
One just kind of housekeeping item with this demo is that we are using Pure Storage FlashArray as the boot from SAN volume for these ESXi hosts. And I just wanted to show, yet another benefit that we at Pure feel like we are able to offer, with our FlashArray snapshot technology. So if you want to kick off the demo, so you can see here I've got a ESXi host. It's all set. It's all been configured. It's ready to be commissioned into SDDC Manager for VMware Cloud Foundation for a workload domain. So it's ready to go. I'm going to shut it off. We can see here, so it's off. I then hop over to my vCenter instance. So I've got 2 workload domains, and let's just say I want to add that ESXi host to the sister's workload domain to start. So if I go into this host, you can see it's part of that host group for that workload domain on the FlashArray. There's my bootlun for that ESXi host. I go in, I take an on-demand snapshot. We'll just call it, demo boot from SAN. Take that snapshot on demand while that host is turned off. There it is. Go Going into KVM, I power this UCS server back on. This is a FlashStack infrastructure. Obviously, skipping some time. That ESXi host is back online. Going into SDDC Manager, I'm going to go ahead and commission this host. Again, we'll see that it validates this host, adds it to the SDDC Manager inventory. The validation process is successful. Bringing it into inventory here. And then we'll take what was originally a 3-host ESXi cluster and then import that host that I just added into it. So there's that. So here's where we add that host in. There's our one available host for that cluster. Then we'll go ahead. I'm going to hide my license from you guys. No offense. And then we go ahead and bring it in. And then, so as we can see with an SDDC Manager, that host is being added. And then on vCenter, because it's in enhanced link mode, we can see that our 3-node workload domain is now about to become a 4-node workload domain. So this completes, it automates bringing all that in. Well, let's say now we want to move this ESXi host from that first workload domain to a different workload domain. To do that, we go back in here, we just to our sisters cluster, we decommission that particular host. It gets pulled out of that workload domain. And now typically this is, I think, the value that we're really able to add here, right? Now, normally you would have to completely reimage this ESXi host and start over. But what we're going to do instead is we're going to decommission it. So we're going to remove it from SDDC Manager. And then we'll actually go back to the FlashArray. Again, I took that snapshot at the beginning of this demo, and I'm just going to restore it. Again, because I remember that this boot from SAN snapshot is basically the ready to go ESXi image. The other thing I have to do quickly is move this ESXi host, from one host group to another on the FlashArray. You can obviously script a lot of this, but just to kind of show it graphically, I figured that would be a little bit more instructive. So then we go ahead and add that to our Bend cluster. I live in Bend, by the way, so that's why the town names are here. So here's the host. You can see it's still got some leftover stuff, the cleanup that is required. But all I'm going to do now is just reset it from KVM, right? You could also reset it from the DCUI, but now it's back up. If we log back into this ESXi host, it's completely reset and ready to be recommissioned into SDDC Manager. So the point here, right, is just enhanced lifecycle management for your ESXi hosts as you want to move them around, from one workload domain to another. So we go back through that commissioning process. Go ahead and validate it again. As we can see, it's going to pass unless somebody changed my demo video. So we bring it up. That host is now available back in SDDC Manager inventory. And then we'll go ahead and add it to our Bend workload domain instead. And again, hiding my license from you all, sorry. Click Finish. And then now that host will be commissioned into that other workload domain. And let's just say that other workload domain is, say, a Kubernetes cluster or something like that, where I have additional need for those hosts. We can see that host is now added to that cluster. Because it's under SDDC Manager, it literally automates every step in bringing in that host to that workload domain. And just as an example here, we can see we've got a Kubernetes namespace, a little bit of a teaser for a demo later on that Vaughn and I will be showing. And with that completes this demo.
Yeah, and so thanks for showing that. And so I just want to make sure that the delegates understand. Kyle showed adding a node to a cluster, no rebalancing, removing a node from the cluster, no data rebalancing, rebaselining it from a snapshot versus reloading the binaries again, and then added it again to a second workload domain without any data rebalancing. We did all that in about 4.5 minutes. Now, again, there's some time lapse there, so maybe it was 10 minutes. If you were to do that with alternative infrastructure or direct attached storage infrastructure options, that process there would have been bound to the amount of data you had and how fast you could rebalance all of it. So minimum, let's put it in the range of hours versus minutes.
And not to mention the CPU overhead, right, that would go along with rebalancing that data as well. So you potentially would hit some degraded performance as well during that time frame.
I have a question here.
Yes, sir.
Primarily actually related to the VCF side of things as well. So in a way, because Pure Storage is not reliant on vSAN or even directed SAS storage, so that's one of the things that you're avoiding in this particular case.
Mm-hmm.
But does that also mean that will already be based on the standard model? It can't be consolidated model of VCF always.
Yeah, from the context of this video, because the consolidated model, you're running those quote unquote workload domains from what is effectively your management domain. There are no external principal storage options available as you deploy stuff within there. So you're right. This would only apply to those kind of larger VCF instances.
Yeah,
exactly.
And one the comment I would have on that is, I don't know if you caught it, but VCF 4.1 actually is released today. You can download it today. And one of the new features in 4.1 is that you can have a management domain for not only your local data center, but you can also now have it support your remote or edge deployments. And so usually when we would talk with customers about consolidated deployments, it was usually for the edge deployments, because they had to put a management domain at each installation. And now you can have centralized management domain. And so you don't need to have the edge. So you could actually put a small FlashStack out at the edge and gain all this benefits on a remote site as well.
Yeah, that's good to know. I mean, that case definitely will get catered by this capability now, because I was also thinking about smaller customers where their workload necessitates just 4 hosts, for example. But because of this standard model, they will have to have 8 hosts, 4 for management, 4 for workload.
Yeah, and I should chime in here, right? I think all deployment options have their value, and where their value shines versus diminishes sometimes has to do with the deployment configurations. You can obviously deploy Pure Storage with a 4-node configuration, and the downside of that is you're going to pay more for that deployment compared to maybe an alternative like an HCI platform. We'll get into economics here at the end, but what you see is from 8 nodes or larger, that's really the space we play in, right? We do a lot of 10 and hundreds or thousands of nodes in the deployments that are in our customer segment, which tends to be commercial, high-end commercial, and enterprise.
Yeah, I have a quick question. Well, I don't know if it's possible, but what I'm envisioning, it would be great if I could have external triggers that would determine whether or not I need to reprovision and host in a different domain. Is that something that's possible at this point? I mean, carefully, obviously, I don't want my host flipping and flopping, but with certain parameters I set up at one point that it automatically rebalances my different domains.
So SDDC Manager does have an API, and you are able to kick off actions around that. My boss, Cody Hosterman, has been working pretty hard on automating that whole commissioning of ESXi hosts step from end to end. So is it possible? Probably. Have I done it? No. But I
support it.
Yeah. So I think I mean, I think with some scripting work that would certainly be doable. Out of the box, though, to be honest, I don't believe you could do that out of the box. But I think with some scripting and some API work, it could certainly be done.
Yeah, great. I really like what you proposed there. I can't think of an API call that was missing for us to do that. There's always a demand for more automation and agility. But when we get into like automated resource assignments, right, then what we tend to see is customers get a little more shy of that. But I do like the notion of putting in some type of monitoring mechanism to make it fully agile based on the needs of your workload. So I appreciate that comment.
Yeah, something that we don't have time to go into today, but I just wanted to chime in real quick, is that the SDDC Manager does have a lot of integration with the vRealize suite, and of course there's a ton of plugins and a lot of available things you can do, with VRO or VRA or VROPS, and kind of have those monitoring engines set up. And Pure's got a plugin for that. VCF certainly has a plugin for that as well. So I do think that within that kind of vRealize framework, there's a lot that can be done.